All right, welcome to the Explainer. So, have you ever started a brand new TypeScript project and just, bam, you're hit with this flood of weird files you've never seen before? Yeah, this one's for you. We're going to decode that whole initial setup and turn all that mystery into mastery.
Okay, so let's dive right in. You run one simple command, maybe it's npm init, and just like that, boom, your folder is suddenly full of files like tsconfig.json, package.json, and oh yeah, that giant node modules folder. Seriously, what is all this stuff? You know, it can feel pretty overwhelming. Doesn't matter if you're a new developer or you've been doing this for years. It's kind of like someone just handed you a car engine and a box of parts. You know it's powerful, but man, it's confusing at first glance. But trust me on this, it's not nearly as complicated as it seems. So, in this explainer, we're going to break it all down. We're going to decode the purpose of every single key file and folder. And by the end, you're not just going to understand what they do, you're going to feel totally confident managing and setting up your own projects right from scratch. All right, first up, tsconfig.json. The best way to think about this file, it's the official rulebook for your project. Like if your code was a board game, this is the document that lays out all the rules for how it's played, how your TypeScript behaves, and how it all gets processed.
I mean, at its core, that's its entire job. It's the control panel for the whole transpilation process. And that's just a fancy word for that kind of magical step where your modern, safe TypeScript gets converted into plain old JavaScript that any browser or a Node.js environment can understand and run.
And these settings, they have a huge impact. For example, you can change the target from, say, a super modern version of JavaScript like ES 2022 down to something way older like ES5. And just by doing that, your cutting-edge code can now run on browsers that are literally years old. How cool is that? It's all about making sure your code is compatible, organized, and does exactly what you want it to do, no matter where it ends up running. Okay, so that's the rulebook. Now let's move on to the next major file, package.json. And if tsconfig.json is the rulebook, well, then package.json is everything else. It's your project's blueprint, its ID card, and its recipe, all rolled into one single file.
Yeah, this file is basically the central hub of information for your whole project. It tells any other person, or any automated system for that matter, what your project's called, what version you're on, and probably most importantly, what other pieces of code it absolutely needs to function.
And that brings us to the most critical part of this file, for sure, the dependencies section. See, modern development is all about not reinventing the wheel, right? It's about standing on the shoulders of giants. You don't write everything from scratch. And this list, dependencies, is exactly where you declare all those external libraries and tools your project is built on.
Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, hey, wait a minute, that just looks like a JavaScript object. And you're close, but there's a really key difference. It's actually JSON. That stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a much stricter text-only data format. See how all the keys have to be in double quotes? That's a JSON rule. And the reason for that is so it can be a universal language for data, something that pretty much any programming language can read, not just JavaScript.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about these dependencies, but where do they actually come from? Well, the answer is a place called NPM, which stands for the Node Package Manager.
The easiest way to think of NPM is as a gigantic public library, but for code. It's this massive registry where developers from all over the world share their tools and libraries for anyone to use. I mean, you need to work with dates? There's a package for that. Need a whole web framework? There are dozens of them. NPM is the command line tool you use to go check out these packages and bring them into your own project. And just to give you an idea of the sheer scale of this, we're talking about over 2 million unique packages available on NPM. Just let that sink in for a second. 2 million. This massive collection of open source code is honestly what makes modern, super fast development possible. It's just a huge testament to what the developer community can build together. Okay, so let's put it all together now. We've got our project blueprint, the package.json file, and we've got this massive public library, NPM. So how do we actually get the books from the library onto our shelf? How do they work together? Well, this is where that famous, or maybe infamous, folder, Node Modules, enters the picture. This simple three-step process is basically the heartbeat of modern JavaScript development. It's so fundamental. First, you list what you need in package.json. Second, you run npm install in your terminal to tell npm to go get it. And third, npm downloads all that code into your Node Modules folder. The analogy is perfect. Package.json is your library card, npm install is the helpful librarian, and node modules, well, that's your own personal bookshelf right there in your project.
And this folder, this bookshelf, it contains a local copy of every single package your project needs. But not just that, it also has all the packages that those packages need to run. It's a whole tree of dependencies. And this is so important because it's what lets your code run anytime, anywhere, even if you're not connected to the internet. It's your project's totally self-contained, offline library.
But here's the paradox, right? If you've ever used Git, you've probably seen a .gitignore file. And what's almost always the very first thing on that list? Node modules. So if this folder is so critical, why on earth do we go out of our way to not share it with other developers?
Well, it really just comes down to a couple of simple, logical reasons. First, that folder is huge. It can have thousands of files and easily bloat your project repository. But even more importantly, it's just not necessary. It's redundant, because package.json is the master recipe. Anyone who has that file can just run npm install and build the exact same node modules folder for themselves. Think of it this way. It's reproducible code, not your actual source code.
So ultimately, it's all about shifting how you see these things. These files and folders, they aren't clutter. They aren't obstacles you have to deal with. No, they are the very foundation of modern development. They're the powerful, standardized tools that let us work together to build really complex stuff efficiently and reliably.
So there you have it. You've hopefully turned that initial confusion into confidence. You now know that tsconfig.json gives you the rules and control, package.json provides the blueprint and the structure, and npm gives you access to a whole universe of code. The foundation is all set, so now the really fun part begins. The only question left is, what amazing thing are you going to build?